Welcome to Stuff They Didn't Teach Me in Sunday School. We hear about Moses' crime, Moses' sin, that keeps him out of the promised land. We hear about that story in Sunday school lessons. We're going to take a closer look at that today. You'll find it in Numbers chapter 20. First of all, you need to know that in Numbers chapter 20, verse 1, that covers 38 years. Verse 1 covers 38 years. And I don't know how it went when you read these Sunday school stories, if you grew up going to Sunday school and read these stories, and you heard about the Israelites wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. I just kind of pictured them getting up every morning and just kind of stumbling around in the desert until the sunset, and then they parked it for the evening, and then the next morning they get up and stumble around some more. Probably didn't work that way. They probably stayed at a place called Kadesh Barnea most of the time. Chapter 20 of Numbers has them at a place called Kadesh Barnea, and it's here in verse 1 that Miriam dies. And we are now 38 years later. But things haven't changed much. If you read verse 2, now there was no water for the congregation. You know what's coming, don't you? And they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron, and the people contended with Moses and said, and you could almost say this with me, would that we had died when our brethren died before Yahweh. Why have you brought the assembly of Yahweh into this wilderness that we should die here, both we and our cattle? And why have you made us come up out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is no place for grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink. I counted one time. There are 14 different times in Exodus and Numbers that kind of a complaint comes from the mouths of the people. Moses and Aaron then go to God, and God gives them instructions on how to handle this. Verse 8, take the rod and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron your brother, and tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. And you shall bring water out of the rock for them, so you shall give drink to the congregation and their cattle. And Moses took the rod from before Yahweh as he commanded him. So the command was, go to the rock, speak to this rock, and tell it to bring forth water. Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock. And he said to them, hear now, you rebels, shall we bring forth water for you out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his rod twice. Most Sunday school lessons that I've seen and most stories that I've seen drawn out of this text highlight Moses' sin as striking the rock instead of speaking to it. That Moses didn't follow God's command precisely. I don't think that's the issue, because if you read farther, I think you'll find the issue. After water comes out of the rock, verse 12, and Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe in me to sanctify me in the eyes of the people of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. It wasn't a striking the rock, it was Moses' words. Let me go back and read his words to you again. Hear now, you rebels, shall we bring forth water for you out of this rock? Moses' problem is that he falls into the trap that the people had set. He does exactly what the people are doing. He fails to look to Yahweh as the provider, and even more importantly, as the leader of these people, he fails to point them to Yahweh as the provider for all their needs. Instead, he and Aaron take credit for the production of water from that rock. It's not for striking the rock instead of talking to it that Moses doesn't get to go into the land, but it's for failing to point the people to the provider of all their needs, Yahweh. The place gets a name. The name of the place becomes the waters of Meribah, and that means contention, arguing. A name that probably could have applied to almost anywhere along the line in Israel's travels through that Sinai Peninsula. And yet God, once again, will bring the people to the land. He will give Moses a glimpse of the land. And you know, there's an element of grace too in the fact that God does take Moses to himself. And Moses doesn't have to deal with these people after he brings them to the borders of the land. God is a good God. God is a provider. The people failed to recognize that. And in this case, Moses failed to point them to it.